Hey guys, what's up? It's Aime and welcome back to my channel. I do video essays on the intersection between environmentalism and social justice, and today I'm going to be uploading part 2 of my video on Jordan Peterson, but I will have some more articles and essays in the description kind of expanding on the points that I touch on in this video. That being said, let's get straight into the video.
So what Lomborg did was gather a teams of economists, multiple teams, some of whom were Nobel Prize winning economists. He had them assemble teams. He had them rank order development goals in terms of their return on investment, all of the teams. Then he averaged across the teams and came up with a final list, and addressing global warming wasn't even on the list.
Yeah, that's literally the problem. That's what we're fighting against. Like, we're fighting for governments to start caring and prioritizing climate change and global warming and environmental destruction over momentary profits. That's what we're fighting for. It's kind of impressive how many people have been able to convince themselves that climate change doesn't exist. And I think it's really disgusting because it's at the hand of these corporations and the governments that benefit from it. If we don't have people in office who are prioritizing green energy, then we're not going to have people prioritizing green energy. I don't know how this is a point against climate change. Once again, it's just a single data point. One person who doesn't believe in prioritizing climate change doesn't mean that nobody believes in prioritizing climate change. But I think the big thing though is that we need to talk about climate change not as an issue for the future, but as an issue for today, because going down right now. Like, you might not be able to see it, but you are seeing it. One example is flooding that's increasing, fires that are increasing, whole islands are going underwater, and we're just acting like climate change is like 50 years in the future. No, it's happening right now, and we need to start talking about it as if it's happening right now. And if we just continue to do nothing, it's going to lead to the extinction of the human race, which might not be that bad. But I think the sad thing is that these negative consequences are starting, like, they're happening more to the people who don't deserve it and the people who can't protect themselves against it. And specifically, even in the US, like if we have hurricanes and stuff, this just reminds me of Ben Shapiro and his idiotic take when it comes to climate change, is that if your house is flooding, if your house is going to be underwater, just sell it and move more inland. Like, just sell your house
by, let's say, 5 feet over the next 100 years, say 10 feet by the next 100 years, and it puts all the low-lying areas on the coast underwater, right? Which, let's say all of that happens. You think that people aren't going to just sell their homes and move?
These are the conservatives that people are listening to about climate change. Like, that's so sad. Ugh, it frustrates me that the people who are being hurt the most by climate change, the people who are finding themselves in famines more often, islands that are going underwater, those are the people who literally didn't start the issues.
So, you know, maybe if you increase child nutrition enough and you produce another, I don't know, 10 million geniuses as a consequence of that, and maybe one of them will figure out what to do about global warming.
So it turns out that me and Jordan Peterson do agree on something. Who would have thunk? We have enough food to feed the planet. We literally physically create enough food. There's no reason that people should be hungry, but because of greed and because of our lack of distributing the food in a way that makes it so everyone gets food, people starve to death. And it doesn't make sense to me. We might not have a cure for cancer, but we have a cure for starvation, and it's literally just giving people food, but we refuse to do it because capitalism. It's not that me and Jordan Peterson agree that we should allow not just children, I'd argue, but basically everyone on this planet to make sure that they have food. Can we agree to do something about it? Because if I remember correctly, all lives matter. So why are people dying unnecessarily from starvation? Also, what is it with Westerners and only believing that there is starvation happening in other parts of the world? I was watching this commercial by Feed the Children, and it was basically every time they showed a starving child, it was a black or brown kid. And then when they showed the children that weren't starving or had a family, it was white kids. This messaging is really off kilter. Yes, there are starving children in Africa, but there's also starving children in your backyard. I guarantee it. New York City was actually hesitant to put a lockdown because they were worried that children wouldn't be able to eat because they rely on the food that they get at school. shouldn't we be nervous about that? And if you disagree on giving food internationally, I think at the very least we should be redistributing the food in our own country so that children aren't starving for no reason. Might I remind you, we have enough food. I think like half of the food we produce goes to waste. And for what? Literally for what? So this is kind of off topic, but you know, that's kind of what I do. This whole notion of like the starving children in Africa, it kind of reminds me of when I was in college and I took a class on humanitarianism. One of the essays that we read and still stays with me to this day was basically about our perception of problems in other countries. So the example that I give is someone from Central African Republic coming to the US.
Anyway, so
the example I give is someone from the Central African Republic coming to the US and then hearing about gun control and hearing about the problem that the US has with gun violence. This person might be like, oh, you guys have problems with guns, just ban guns, problem solved. But as an American, you would probably be like, well, it's more complicated than that. Conservatives love guns, the NRA is really popular, and there's the Second Amendment, so we can't just ban guns. It's not gonna solve the issue. And then vice versa, someone who's American might go to the Central African Republic might go to the Central African Republic and then be like, wait, there's a problem with starvation, just plant more food. And the people that live there will be like, well, you don't understand, there's like, it's more complicated than that. But the whole idea is that we're not able to see the historical and social context that creates these issues and makes them hard to solve. So I don't know, it's kind of off topic, but I just thought that was really interesting. And to this day I roll my eyes whenever I hear people basically bring up like, I just roll my eyes whenever I see like people talking about starvation, specifically in Africa because I'm African. To me, I feel like it's just become a meme. How are you gonna complain about Africa having so many starving children and being sad about it, and then also supporting corporations that are exploiting Africa and governments that are exploiting Africa? How does that work? So I meant what I said, but I just wanted to clarify what I was talking about in this section because it got kind of convoluted. But basically, I hate it when people bring up the idea of like the starving children in Africa because it's never anything constructive. It's either one, as like a joke, as like a meme, or two, people say it in kind of like a pitiful way of like, oh my god, it's so sad that Africa's this slums and all the children. Like the idea in people's mind is that Africa's just a wasteland and it's horrible to live there and they feel bad for the Africans. But it's just really ignorant to me because these same people don't actually understand the way kind of international relations and the colonization that we see to this day is impacting and is keeping Africa poor. So I just wish people would do their research and kind of understand why Africa is still as poor as it is, and also to at the same time reject, kind of get rid of this idea that Africa is a wasteland, because it's not. I remember in high school this girl literally asked me like, there's any rich people in Africa, and I had to explain to her that yes, there's poverty in Africa, but there's also rich people. So long story short, I'm not blaming individuals for the actions of corporations or for governments at all, but I just wish people would kind of educate themselves more on what is happening in Africa so we can kind of move past this like, there's starving children in Africa, Africa is so poor, and kind of move towards solutions and also advocate for social change that's going to improve the livelihood of Africans rather than just feeling bad for Africans, because that's literally doing nothing. So anyways, back to the video, because that's not what this video is about.
You shouldn't burn coal. It's like, okay, fair enough. What do you want to do? Burn trees instead? Because that's what poor people would have done. It's like, coal isn't good. Well, it's better than burning wood.
So here's the thing, he's on the right track actually. You have to continue this logic to its conclusion. Basically what you have to do is start with the cheapest and most unsustainable energy sources and move up until you get to one that you can afford and you can sustain. Coal's not sustainable, so you switch to natural gas. Natural gas isn't sustainable, so you switch to wind, you switch to nuclear. You keep moving up until you find an energy source that is sustainable and also environmentally friendly. That's the idea. Like, that's so simple. Like, it's never been about being perfect at all. It's just been about trying our best, and right now a lot of countries aren't trying at all, so we're gonna need y'all to pick up the pace. But the simple idea is is that you start small and then you move up until you get to an energy source that you can sustain, given that people are also reducing their energy demand, because if people don't decrease their demand and corporations don't decrease their demand, then it's going to be almost impossible for us to switch to a clean energy source because it'll just be too much demand. This is all very complicated and I'm oversimplifying, but decreasing demand is such an important part of a sustainable energy future and people don't really talk a lot about it. But I just wanted to remind people that we need to decrease our demand because we've been increasing how much energy we consume over the years, and we can't keep doing, like, just because we switch to green energy doesn't mean that we can continue to consume an infinite amount of energy, because even green energy has an impact on the planet. Like, solar panels need space, windmills need space.
Compare the solar farm I just described, Ivanpah, to California's last nuclear plant, Diablo Canyon. It takes 450 times more land to generate the same amount of electricity as it does from nuclear. You would need 17 more solar farms like Ivanpah in order to generate the same output as Diablo Canyon, and of course it would then be unreliable.
We just need to make sure that we're decreasing our energy demand as we're transitioning to a greener energy infrastructure. That's the word I was looking for. This is why whenever we're talking about international environmental regulations, that we don't set the same rules for every country, because all countries are different. Some countries, USA, consume way too much and just naturally have a higher energy demand, and then other countries don't consume as much and might not even have the infrastructure that is needed for them to transition to cleaner energy as fast as everyone else, mostly because of colonization and imperialism. But that's not the video for today. We're going to talk about that in another video.
So these things are complicated. So they're unbelievably complicated.
Because you're not a scientist, you're not a climate scientist, so nobody asked you to understand these things. I think they're very complicated, and I've obviously been trying to understand them. I obviously studied sustainability, which is not the same as studying climate science at all. So when I did my minor in sustainability, I didn't really do the science. None of the classes I took, and I think I took 9 classes for my minor. None of them were about the science at all. I basically just was looking at the social side of everything. So looking at how governments can implement sustainable policies, businesses, how they can implement sustainable policies, how people can implement sustainability within their life. I took a class on communities, how we can have more resilient communities. I took a class about, I really love this class, on like buildings, how we can have sustainable buildings, specifically sustainable houses. And then I also took a class on environmental ethics, which kind of talks about how we can advocate for the planet, and also about how we can advocate for non-human animals. Basically just learn the social implications of environmental destruction and how we can mitigate it. That was basically my minor. That being said, I don't fully understand the science behind it, and most people don't fully understand the science. It's really normal to not understand the science. It is very complicated, just like I don't understand the anatomy of a human being. I mean, I know I have a heart and it beats and I should run. I know some things related to the body, but I'm not an expert on how the body works, and I shouldn't be expected to because I'm not a doctor. So you don't completely understand climate science. You shouldn't be expected to. You're not a climate scientist. What that means though is that you can't go around spreading misinformation about climate science because you don't fully understand it. It's not your job. Not everyone knows everything about everything.
Did you hear the one about the kid who wanted to know everything about everything? That's you!
Other than the science kid. So we need to listen to the people that do know about specific subjects, i.e. listen to scientists, climate scientists specifically, when we're talking about climate change. Just because you think climate change is very complicated doesn't mean that there aren't experts out there who do understand it, and those experts are giving us solutions.
No, it's not going to unite us. And we're not going to do a damn thing about it either.
I can't do this anymore. Oh my god.
Well, what are we going to do? You're going to stop having heat? You're going to stop having electricity? You're going to stop driving your cars? You're going to stop taking trains? It's like you're going to stop using your iPhones? You're not going to do any of that. And no wonder. So no.
So clearly he hasn't done much research and he doesn't actually understand the solutions. I don't know if he actually thinks that we're not going to be able to use phones if we transition to a green energy infrastructure. Does he understand how electricity works? We'll still be able to do all of these things. So he's just like I said, he's just trying to scare people, and I hope it's not working. But I'm just curious as to why he said trains. He clearly doesn't understand climate solutions, because trains are praised for being a more sustainable option to travel than riding airplanes. So he clearly has no idea what he's talking about. So in conclusion, I hate it here. So Jordan Peterson is not a scientist. In case you didn't know, in case you haven't got that from this video, he is not a scientist. Qualifications, 0. I don't even know what he studied. If he went to college, he probably studied politics, because he's had a lot of people just like him in my political science classes. It'd be one thing if he actually talked about the political side, because there is a political side, but he literally started his whole speech by saying that it's hard to separate the science from the politics, and then he went through and talked about the science as if it was subjective, which it's not subjective at all. Like, I just thought it was really interesting. And also just wanted to note that there was really a huge lack of like statistics, which he was able to give specific evidence. Like, he talked about Germany, he talked about some book that he read, and another like and he said something else specific, like he cited another book. So I'm sure if he actually knew what he was talking about when it comes to climate change, he would give statistics, like, period. But he didn't, because he has no idea what he's talking about. And he even admitted to saying that he thinks climate change is very complicated. And then he went on to basically talk about it with his full chest, as if he is correct. The first was when he implied that if poor people cared more about climate change, things would be better. And then the second was when he said that we're not going to be able to use trains in the future because of climate change. Like, those are just so not correct. Like, specifically with the poor people one. Like, why do we allow people like this to have a voice when it comes to the debate, not even debate, when it comes to the conversation on climate change, yet we would never do the same for medicine or law? Would you let Jordan Peterson represent you in court? You wouldn't let someone who didn't go to law school represent you in court. Why are we letting these people talk about climate change as if they are experts, which they are not? I don't understand it. Like, yes, share your opinion, but please don't make it as if it's a fact. What I was gonna say is, if you want actual accurate information about climate change from actual scientists, like, obviously I'm not a scientist, but I do actually share information that's not my opinion. On my website, I have a list of content creators that talk about climate change and environmentalism and what you can do to have an impact. Definitely go to my website for that. And I also have podcasts you can... No, there's a plane. Someone doesn't want me to succeed on YouTube. Is that you? God, is that you? What did I do this time? I also have a podcast myself where I talk to people who care about the environment, and that will be linked down below as well. So that's the end of this video. If you haven't seen the first part, I'm going to be linking it down in the description so you can watch that part. But if you enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe to my channel, obviously. And we're so close to 4,000. It'd be fun to hit 4K before March. There really isn't much of a meeting, and I'm probably gonna hit it within the next week anyways. But if you want to help me just be able to say that I did it, definitely hit subscribe. You can also comment anything you want to comment, and also like this video. If you want to support my channel, then you can also go over to my Patreon. And I also just wanted to give a thank you to my patrons for supporting my content and helping me make amazing videos. On my Patreon, I upload videos early, and I'm also working on some extra content for my patrons. So definitely be sure to check out my Patreon if you want some extra videos. I'm also going to have all my social media linked down below, so you can follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and that's basically TikTok. I also have a TikTok if you want to follow me there. I think that's it for today's video, but thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in my next one. Bye guys.